Yeah, and I think that definitely, our family and that love of the horse has definitely come from her and her mother.
In a dramatic and shocking turn of events, the pearl set, once worn by the Queen Mother herself and kept out of the public eye for many decades, has now appeared again. When Zara Tindall, the Queen's own granddaughter, passed it on to Catherine, Princess of Wales, it shocked the monarchy. But what set this historic gift in motion? And why was Camilla, the Queen Consort, refused when she asked to borrow it just days earlier? Join us as we uncover the breathtaking gesture of Zara to Catherine. Zara Tindall's surprising gift to Catherine. For generations, the Queen Mother's pearl set existed less as a piece of jewelry and more as a legend. It was spoken about in whispers, mentioned carefully in private letters, and protected like a sacred relic. These pearls were tied to dignity and endurance, shaped by Britain's darkest moments when the monarchy needed symbols of strength to survive. They were never meant to be worn casually or shown off for style. Instead, they were reserved for moments that truly mattered, occasions when the crown needed to project calm, sacrifice, and unbreakable resolve. So when the pearls suddenly resurfaced, it was no accident. Their return was a deliberate signal. The moment word spread that the pearls had been removed from their private vault, an uneasy tension rippled through palace corridors. Everyone understood what it meant. Nothing involving those pearls ever happened by chance.
The Queen Mother wears her shamrocks on her lapel. Officers pin them on their caps.
Zara Tindall has never been a loud presence in royal life. But in her case, silence has always been a form of power. Raised to respect legacy more than titles, she learned early that true influence does not always sit on a throne. Within royal circles, Zara has long been seen as steady and reliable, someone trusted precisely because she never chased attention or favor. That quiet reputation made what happened next all the more shocking. When news broke that Zara herself had authorized the release of the pearls, aides immediately assumed the usual process was underway. A loan seemed obvious. Camilla had already expressed interest, submitting a request that was formal, respectful, and carefully framed as tradition. On paper, it looked inevitable. Everything about the request followed royal protocol.
Charge about. It was all very sort of laid back and happy, and we used to go off.
But that sense of inevitability vanished the moment Zara stepped in personally. Instead of directing the pearls toward the Queen Consort, Zara made a decision that stunned even the most experienced palace insiders. The pearls were not being loaned. They were being given, and not to the woman who currently wore the crown beside the king, but to Catherine, the future queen, whose presence increasingly represents stability and continuity rather than controversy. The decision was fast, final, and deeply personal. There would be no compromise, no shared arrangement, no rotation between generations. The pearls would change hands once and only once. Inside the royal household, the reaction was immediate and intense. Whispers followed staff through long hallways. Senior aides avoided one another's eyes. A heavy sense of disbelief settled over the palace, made sharper by the knowledge that Camilla had already imagined herself wearing those pearls before a global audience. To some, the gift was loyalty made visible, a quiet declaration of where trust truly lay. To others, it felt like betrayal wrapped in elegance. And for Camilla, it was something far more painful, a rejection that carried meaning far beyond a single set of pearls.
I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except them.
Yet this moment did not appear out of thin air. It was the result of years of carefully restrained tension, of decisions quietly judged, and of alliances slowly forming beneath polite smiles and flawless public appearances. The pearls may have re-emerged in a single dramatic moment, but the forces behind that moment had been building for a long time, waiting for the right spark to bring them into the open. And the story behind Zara's decision did not begin in a jewelry vault. It began years earlier, rooted in unspoken conflicts and fractures hidden behind palace photographs. Behind every royal appearance lies a silent battlefield of bloodline loyalty, ancient hierarchy, and unresolved resentment.
Yeah, I've always loved having that blood in the event horse for sure.
As Camilla's influence steadily grew, Zara watched from the sidelines, saying little, observing everything and holding close the memory of her grandmother, the Queen Mother, and what those pearls were truly meant to represent. What loyalty could she truly owe to a step queen who had once torn apart the very family she cherished? Let's find out. The hidden battle inside the House of Windsor. For people watching from the outside, the royal family often looked perfectly united, like a carefully arranged display of shining titles, long traditions, and unbreakable loyalty. Everything seemed orderly and calm, but behind that polished image was a far more unstable reality, filled with quiet tension and unspoken divides. The Queen Mother had been a powerful presence in Zara's early life. She was not just a grandmother, but a guiding force, a moral anchor who believed deeply in character over appearance. To her, true strength was shown through silence, discipline, and a sense of duty carried without complaint. Above all else, she had no tolerance for scandal. Reputation mattered, but integrity mattered more. Zara grew up absorbing these values, learning that dignity was something you protected fiercely, especially when the world was watching. Those lessons became even more important during the years when the House of Windsor began to change under the pressure of modern controversy. Traditions that once felt permanent started to crack, and no one represented that shift more clearly than Camilla. When Camilla's relationship with Charles moved from secrecy into full public view, it shook the monarchy's sense of stability.
Charge about. It was all very sort of laid back and happy, and we used to go off.
What had once seemed timeless suddenly felt fragile. For Zara, this was not just a matter of royal politics. It was deeply personal. Watching her uncle's marriage collapse under relentless public attention left quiet wounds. They were never openly discussed, but they never healed either. Her mother, Princess Anne, accepted the situation with her usual calm strength, facing reality without complaint. Zara, however, processed the rupture differently. She felt it deeply, storing it away rather than speaking it aloud. During this period, Zara found herself drawn closer to William and Catherine. In the middle of chaos, they represented something rare: stability by choice. As Zara watched Catherine's steady rise, free from scandal and grounded in duty, she began to feel a quiet loyalty forming. This connection was not based on friendship alone. It was rooted in shared values and a shared understanding of what the monarchy was meant to represent. Inside the royal family, power does not always move through loud announcements or public commands. More often, it flows silently through symbols, heirlooms, titles, and traditions passed from one generation to the next. Who is allowed to wear certain pieces, and when, carries deep meaning. Nothing is ever accidental.
It's really important to stress it. We can't take a fatalistic outlook on this either, for those who haven't had.
The Queen Mother's pearl set was not simply a beautiful collection of jewels. It was a symbol of authority without words. It functioned like a silent scepter, a visible sign of approval passed from one respected matriarch to another. To wear those pearls was to carry her legacy. And while Camilla had risen to the position of Queen Consort, Zara could not reconcile that role with the values the Queen Mother had stood for. Where others saw Camilla stepping confidently into her place, Zara saw something else entirely. To her, it felt like the family's most sacred symbols were being used as stage props rather than honored as earned legacies.
Yeah, and I think that definitely, our family and that love of the horse has definitely come from her and her mother.
Over time, this discomfort grew into quiet resistance. Zara never caused scenes. She remained polite, composed, and outwardly respectful. She never confronted Camilla directly, never spoke publicly, never stirred drama. But her choices began to reflect her inner beliefs. She declined invitations where Camilla would be the main focus. She strengthened her bond with Catherine, supporting her charitable work and appearing beside her in subtleties of unity, always without drawing attention.
So my passion and the work of the Centre for Early Childhood stems from one essential truth.
All the while, Zara waited. She believed that sometimes silence carried more weight than ceremony, and restraint could speak louder than protest. Then the moment arrived. The request came formally, clearly, and in a way that could not be ignored. Camilla made her intentions known. She wanted the pearls. She wanted to wear the Queen Mother's legacy before the eyes of the world. Nothing, however, prepared the family for the moment Camilla formally asked for them. When the request was made through the proper royal channels, Camilla expected cooperation, not opposition. In her mind, it was a simple matter of protocol. But instead of a royal messenger arriving with the pearls at her dressing table, she received something far more unexpected, a firm and deeply personal response from Zara herself. It began quietly at Clarence's house. A major diplomatic gala was approaching, one that would gather monarchs, foreign leaders, and influential figures from across the Commonwealth. For Camilla, it was the ideal stage. She saw it as a chance to reinforce her image, not just as Queen Consort, but as the steady, dignified matriarch of a renewed monarchy. Her outfit was already chosen. Her speeches were carefully rehearsed.
Secondly, because my husband and I are lucky enough to spend precious time each year in Aberdeenshire.
But the one thing she wanted most could not be provided by designers or speechwriters. She wanted the Queen Mother's pearls, elegant, powerful, impossible to overlook. In her mind, they were the final piece needed to complete the image she wished to present. So the request was made, discreetly and respectfully, passed through the correct aides and offices. It was meant to be routine, nothing more than a formality. No one expected resistance. But that assumption would soon prove to be a serious mistake. What Camilla did not expect was that her request would travel directly to Zara's private office. The pearls were not under Zara's care by chance. They were placed with her deliberately. In confidential trust documents, the Queen Mother had clearly stated her private wishes. She chose to place certain important heirlooms in the hands of family members she believed valued legacy more than attention or public display. Zara, though never a queen, was one of those carefully chosen individuals. When the request arrived, it was left untouched for almost 24 hours.
I think it's great. I think the skinnies in the leaf pit are enormous.
This pause was intentional. It was not caused by doubt or confusion, but by careful thought. Zara understood the importance of the moment. She had always known this situation would eventually arise. She simply did not expect it to happen so soon. When the response finally came, it did not come from a spokesperson or a royal messenger. It came directly from Zara herself. She sent a short, handwritten letter. The tone was polite, calm, and respectful, but firm. She thanked the consort for her interest in the pearls, then ended with a sentence that sent shockwaves through the palace. The pearls were not available to be loaned now, and would not be made available in the future. There was no room to misunderstand her meaning. The decision was final. There would be no discussions, no second chances, and no changes of heart. It was, in effect, a royal refusal, not delivered by a crown, but by personal conviction. Why had Camilla chosen simpler, more modest jewelry for such an important public event? And where was the Queen Mother's famous choker that many had fully expected to see displayed around her neck for the first time? Let's find out. The return of the Queen Mother's legacy. By the weekend, the rumors had exploded into a full-blown storm. Anonymous insiders began leaking fragments, snippets of a family decision, whispers of internal disagreement, and talk of a blocked request. At first, Zara's name appeared quietly in the chatter. Then it grew louder, impossible to ignore. Yet she stayed silent, calm, composed, completely absent from headlines, but central to the story in ways no one could misread. Meanwhile, the pearls had seemingly disappeared. They weren't seen on Camilla, and no confirmation surfaced elsewhere.
Don't want to be scared too much, but it's that sort of frisson, isn't there? I've just been a little bit frightened.
Their absence quickly became a symbol of something far greater than jewelry. This was no longer a simple matter of adornment. It was a clash of legacies. One woman asserting her claim to history, another refusing to let it be rewritten. Just when it seemed the pearls had slipped back into secrecy, they made a breathtaking return. A moment that ignited flashbulbs and froze royal watchers worldwide. All eyes were trained on Catherine as she arrived at the State Opera Gala, but the crowd collectively gasped when she turned her head.
I've seen that experiences such as homelessness, addiction, and poor mental health.
The unmistakable Queen Mother pearl choker gleamed against her neckline, dazzling in its brilliance. The atmosphere shifted instantly. One woman's gesture had rewritten the silent rules of the monarchy. There had been no announcement, No official statement, no hint for the press. Yet when Catherine stepped gracefully from the royal vehicle and walked through the grand entrance, there was something undeniably different in the air. It wasn't just her elegance or poise, it was what she wore, a legacy etched in craftsmanship, history, and power. The Queen Mother's pearl choker, the very same one seen in wartime broadcasts and during state declarations, now rested around the Princess of Wales' neck. It was a moment so quiet, yet so intentional, that it carried more weight than any speech could. It didn't just speak, it thundered. The monarchy had shifted in alignment, and the change was irreversible. Within hours, the media erupted. Headlines screamed across newspapers and websites. Commentators scrambled to interpret every nuance. Online forums buzzed nonstop with speculation, as millions tried to decipher the meaning behind one single, dazzling piece of history. Why did the Princess of Wales get to wear what the reigning queen herself had been denied? Let's take a closer look. Zara's quiet choice that shook the monarchy. The missing pearls on Camilla just days earlier suddenly made complete sense. The whispers that Zara had rejected her were no longer mere rumors. They were now undeniable, impossible to ignore. But what made the moment truly extraordinary was that it was no longer hidden behind speculation. It was visible for all to see. Catherine didn't just wear the Queen Mother's pearls. She became the living embodiment of their history, their power, their meaning. And that alone ignited an already smoldering fire of tension within the royal household. Few noticed it in the crowd, but insiders never forgot. Zara was there too. She sat in the royal box, separated by layers of protocol and formality, her face calm and unreadable to the casual observer. Yet anyone familiar with the subtle language of palace life could see the truth in the stillness of her gaze and the faint, almost imperceptible curve of her lips, a small, private smile that carried monumental significance. She had made her choice, not with words, not with arguments, but with a single gesture, so quiet, so deliberate, that it sent shockwaves through the monarchy. Camilla, several boxes away, could not hide her expression. Her face was stony, composed, but her fury was unmistakable. Her moment of glory had been stolen not by chance, but by careful design. The denial she now faced was public, amplified by the pearls, by cameras, and by Catherine's luminous presence. Backstage, the atmosphere was tense, almost electric. Staff whispered in hushed tones. Private secretaries exchanged clipped instructions. One source described it as holding your breath in a room you know could explode at any second. Camilla reportedly left early, claiming exhaustion, but nobody believed it. The unspoken truth was clear. A message had been sent, and it required no press release. The Queen Mother's pearls, now draped around Catherine's neck, were far more than jewelry. They were a declaration, a symbol of succession spelled in pure opulence. The message landed precisely where it was intended. Zara had made her choice, not out of rebellion against Camilla, but out of deep respect for a legacy her grandmother had cherished. Catherine received the pearls, yes, but with them came an invisible crown of trust, an endorsement granted not by titles or ceremony, but by timing, judgment, and belief. Yet beneath the glittering diamonds and luminous pearls lay a history heavier than any crown. These pearls were legacy made tangible, preserved in a private trust, steeped in power, sacrifice, and meaning. They had been forged during an era when monarchy meant survival, not spectacle. The Queen Mother wore them during wartime broadcasts, when fear pressed against palace walls, and the nation needed reassurance more than ceremony. They accompanied her through private grief, not as decoration, but as armor, reminders that continuity mattered, even when the world seemed fractured. Over decades, the pearls absorbed symbolism far beyond mere adornment. Whoever wore them carried a silent code: steadiness, restraint, moral authority. Their future had been carefully plotted, shielded from the standard line of royal inheritance. They were not to be automatically absorbed into the central royal estate, nor handed to the reigning monarch. Instead, they were assigned with intention. Queen Elizabeth, honoring her mother's wishes, left private instructions detailing which heirlooms were meant to remain symbolic rather than ceremonial. Zara's name appeared in these notes, not as a beneficiary of wealth, but as a guardian of values. The pearls entrusted to Zara were protected from interference, including any claim via King Charles. This was extraordinary. It recognized Zara's character rather than her rank. More extraordinary still was a letter written by the Queen Mother herself, never meant for public eyes. In it, she warned that in the future, titles might be claimed loudly, but integrity would be far harder to find. She urged Zara to remember that the monarchy survives not by who wears the crown, but by who earns trust. Insiders say that letter became Zara's compass. To Zara, Catherine embodied everything the Queen Mother had revered: patience, quiet strength, resilience under scrutiny, and the grace to endure hardship without bitterness. Catherine did not chase symbols. They seemed to find her. Camilla, by contrast, represented something entirely different. Not malice, but misalignment. Zara did not question Camilla's position. She questioned what Camilla symbolized. The pearls were never meant to fix an image or elevate a presence. They were meant to affirm a continuity of spirit. By placing them around Catherine's neck, Zara was not just honoring the past, she was safeguarding its future. The act was deeply personal, yet its implications were seismic. It revealed a philosophical fracture within the monarchy. Not a family feud, but a clash of values. As the household struggled to absorb the weight of that gesture, another storm quietly brewed, this time from within the elder ranks of the royal family. What unfolds when a queen consort demands explanations and a royal granddaughter stands her ground? Let's take a closer look. Pearl Clash at Balmoral. Behind the heavy oak doors of Balmoral, a storm quietly gathered, then erupted in what insiders now call the Pearl Clash, a confrontation whose ripples left lasting cracks in the royal household. The tension before it struck was almost tangible, a silence so thick it could have been cut with a knife. It all began after Catherine's dazzling appearance at the State Opera Gala, where she wore the Queen Mother's legendary pearls. Camilla did not vanish from public view, but she seemed to retreat from restraint itself, her composure cracking under the glare of scrutiny. Sources reveal it didn't take long before a private summons was sent. Balmoral had been chosen not out of nostalgia, but for control, a fortress far from London's prying cameras, shielded by centuries-old stone and the unyielding rules of royal protocol. No aides, no advisors, just Zara and Camilla, face to face, alone for the first time since the pearls had been gifted. The moment the doors closed behind them, something electric and dangerous filled the room. What followed would become one of the most explosive private encounters in recent royal memory. Voices rose sharply, loud enough to echo down the palace's stone corridors, shattering Balmoral's usual calm. Staff steered clear, sensing the storm's full force. Later, a senior aide whispered, almost in awe, "It was like the old ghosts of the monarchy were stirring again." Camilla demanded answers, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade, seeking clarity where only secrets had reigned until that moment. Why had Zara deliberately undercut her, letting the world witness it all? Why had the priceless legacy of the Queen Mother been handed to Catherine, completely sidestepping the one woman who now wore the crown? Let's take a closer look. Zara, quiet shift of royal influence. Zara's response, calm but sharp, hurt more than any angry shout could. "You may have the title," she said, "but not the legacy." This was never about rebellion. It was about respecting history, values, and a queen long gone who quietly gave her power. For Camilla, the blow was double. She hadn't just been denied the pearls. She had now been openly shown unfit for their meaning. Her anger was not only personal, it was strategic. She understood the importance of symbols, appearances, and how people's views shaped power. And in one calm, controlled gesture, Zara had taken it all. But Zara didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. For her, this wasn't personal. It was about keeping a standard that no title or marriage could buy. Catherine, meanwhile, was surprised. She had accepted the pearls with grace, not knowing the storm waiting behind the palace doors. When Camilla privately asked her to return them, Catherine politely but firmly refused, saying the gift came from the heart and should stay. That quiet, steady refusal secured Catherine's place, not just in Zara's eyes, but among those in the royal circle who still valued merit over scheming. As the palace staff rushed to manage the fallout, leaks threatened to appear, rumors spread, and late-night meetings went on for hours. Official statements were written, then discarded. It was clear this was no mistake. The split was visible, and the effects were spreading. Behind the palace's golden walls, sides had been chosen. Yet outside, the monarchy's image began to shift, subtly but strongly. The pearls had become more than a gift. They were a symbol. Over the following weeks, Catherine's role on the royal stage grew. She moved with new confidence. Her public appearances now carried weight. Whether at a military event or opening a hospital, her presence showed authority. And the pearls were always there, not to show off, but to quietly signal moral strength. The public noticed. Approval ratings rose, and polls suggested Catherine was now seen as the monarchy's steady future leader. Calm in chaos, humble in strength, she became someone people trusted. Invitations once sent to Camilla were now sent to Catherine, and Camilla's absences were explained with vague reasons. Though insiders knew the truth, she had stepped back. Then came a photograph that made the message clear. Zara and Catherine, side by side at a children's hospice, smiling gently as they listened to a young patient's story. It was warm, it was strong, and it was no accident. Released officially, the image sent a message louder than words. A new alliance had formed. One woman held public care, the other held the weight of heritage. Together, they restored something the monarchy had been losing: trust. King Charles reportedly worried about appearances, asking advisors how to manage perception. But the public had already decided. Camilla had the title, but Catherine had become the face of continuity, graceful, quiet, and strong. At the center of it all were the pearls, no longer symbols of rank, but of carefully protected legacy passed to the right hands. Zara had done more than give jewelry. She had shown a way forward with care rather than showiness. In Catherine, she found someone able to carry that responsibility. The pearls had not just been given, they had been guarded. By Christmas at Sandringham, the tensions were clear. Usually a sign of unity, the gathering was colder than ever. Catherine and Zara were deliberately kept apart from Camilla, who sat stiffly 3 chairs away. Charles tried to stay calm, but the shift in alliances was clear. During the official photo for the Queen's speech, Catherine appeared front and center, wearing the Queen Mother's pearl bracelet. The meaning was immediate and obvious. This was not rebellion. It was taking back what mattered. The pearls had become a silent language of succession. Even the next generation showed the change, with Zara's children playing freely with the Wales children, a sign of real alliances forming beyond court politics. Camilla, clearly upset, quietly left before dinner. The official story saying a minor migraine, insiders whispering anger. She had not only lost the pearls, she had lost control. Through months of changing alliances and quiet power moves, one truth became clear. Zara's gesture was not just a reaction, it was a reckoning. Her act went beyond personal rivalry, shaping the monarchy's heart. By giving Catherine the pearls, she invested in the future, recognizing a woman who had faced storms with grace and earned her place without demanding it. Camilla keeps her title, but influence has shifted. Public opinion now favors character over crown, consistency over show. So what do you think about Zara Tindall's shocking gesture to Catherine over Camilla? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.